Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins, a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and sacred scriptures, along with information on topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm Father Jim Korda. Wineskins is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our show today, I will interview Dr. Jim Kravec. We will also look at the life of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, as well as reflections on the readings for this feast of the Epiphany of the Lord. That and more coming up on Wineskins. In our current issue, I will speak with the president of Cardinal Mooney High School. Joining me is Thomas Maj, who is the president of Cardinal Mooney High School. Welcome to Wineskins.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, you come with a long line of not only credentials, but experience in administration and in Catholic schools. Share with us very briefly your background.
Well, born and raised in Catholic Church. I attended grade school at St. Vivian's in Cincinnati. There were a couple of years that I wasn't in Catholic schools due to my father's military career, but it's been a big part of my life. Started at Roger Bacon, which is now a co-ed school, but back in the day it was all boys. And I know what it's done for me personally as a student and adult. I appreciate it so much more, I think, after leaving Catholic schools and maybe at the time that I was there. But knowing what it does to and for students, it's just been a big part of my life. And I want to say in 1999, I became a Catholic school administrator in Grand Rapids and have been in the Catholic schools since.
And what was kind of the state of affairs that you find yourself in Cardinal Mooney, obviously coming this past April in the midst of the pandemic? So getting your feet kind of in the waters was real baptism by fire. Tell us about that.
Well, I came from a Catholic high school in Dallas, and so I ushered in COVID down there and online learning at that school, and so the transition to Cardinal Mooney wasn't any different than what we had done in March, and just as it had done. You know, schools are schools. They operate basically the same way. It's whatever percent is left after operations is what you need to know. So, I had to learn the Youngstown community and Mooney community, and I know that it has a large Italian population, so a little bit familiar with that. I like to joke with families here that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so as a freshman in 1973, Mooney beat Cincinnati Moeller, who we all despised. And so I've been a fan of Mooney since I was a freshman in high school. So it was an easy transition for me. And the community's been very warm and welcoming. My wife and I are both very pleased that we're here.
We've just gotten over the Christmas season and find ourselves in the new year. What kind of lies ahead for Cardinal Mooney?
Well, I think most importantly, our schools are critical, I think, to the health and well-being of the communities in which they reside. And so what lies ahead is my efforts to continue to help Mooney thrive into the decades to come so that Youngstown has quality education and Catholic institutions available to the sons and daughters. We know the good work that goes on the inside, but the physical presence of the plant itself is a beacon of hope to the surrounding community.
That's important because I think over these last several years, there's been some really capital campaign and kind of upkeep of the building itself, which over the years, unfortunately, had fallen on some hard times. Tell us some of those future plans that you have for the structure itself.
I find the school to be structurally in pretty good shape. We've invested a lot in some maintenance, probably deferred maintenance from over the years, as you suggested. They had a facelift a few years back. My experience, having served in 5 other Catholic schools, it's one of the better in-shape buildings that I've been in. But I would say going forward, one of the things that we're going to look at is how do we bring Mooney into the 21st century kind of education. There, the classroom square footage changes. The technology certainly has altered how we educate. And I think there's some other programming areas that may not alter the shape or the physical plant itself, but how we deliver Catholic education within the school.
I know that Dr. Biding is the principal of Cardinal Mooney. How did the two of you work together, and what is your relationship administratively?
Well, simply, the presidents typically in our Catholic schools are outward facing. They connect the institution with the outside world where donors and friends are at, and the principal is mostly responsible for internal affairs. Dr. Biding and I, between us, probably offer more than 70 years of education, and most of that has been in Catholic schools. We're both products of Catholic schools. I defer a lot to her experience and wisdom. She brings a certain calmness, but a rigorous approach to, again, providing Catholic education. So we've hit it off, and I'm very grateful. On the heels of the option of retiring, she has stayed on because she's enjoyed the community so much, and it's been great for me to starting off new with Mooney.
Let's say that there are folks that would like more information about Cardinal Mooney or just to visit. What do they do? Who do they go to?
Well, first and foremost, I think they should call me. I think we live in a time and a place now where it's families aren't going to come to us as much as we need to reach out. As I think Pope John Paul and Francis have indicated, we have to go to where the people are at. And so I would encourage all families, if they want to know what a Catholic education is, what makes it different, and most importantly, what makes it vital, call the guy at the head of the institution and find out what his worldview is.
Tom May, thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to your presence next week, again on Wineskins, where we'll talk a little bit more about Cardinal Mooney and some of the wonderful things that have been happening there and will continue to happen in the future. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. Tomorrow, the Church celebrates the feast of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. To tell us more is Diana Hancharenko. She is the young adult minister at St. Angela Merici Church in Youngstown.
This wife, mother, and foundress of a religious congregation was born Elizabeth Ann Bailey on August 28, 1774 in New York City, the daughter of an eminent physician and professor of what is now Columbia University. Brought up as an Episcopalian, she received an excellent education, and from her early years, she manifested an unusual concern for the poor. In 1794, Elizabeth married William Seton, with whom she had 5 children. The loss of their fortune so affected William's health that in 1803, Elizabeth and William went to stay with Catholic friends at Livorno, Italy. William died 6 weeks after their arrival, and when Elizabeth returned to New York some 6 months later, she was already a convinced Catholic. She met with stern opposition from her Episcopalian friends, but was baptized Catholic on March 4, 1805. Abandoned by her friends and relatives, Elizabeth was invited by the superior of the Sulpicians in Baltimore to found a school for girls in that city. They were already permitted to make religious profession and to wear a religious habit. In 1809, Elizabeth moved her young community to Emmitsburg, Maryland, where she adopted as a rule of life an adaptation of the rule observed by the Sisters of Charity, founded by St. Vincent de Paul. While she maintained her ministry to the poor, and especially to Black people, she also laid the foundation for what became the first American parochial school system. She trained teachers and prepared textbooks for use in the schools. She also opened orphanages in Philadelphia and New York City. She died at Emmitsburg on January 4, 1821, was beatified by Pope St. John XXIII in 1963, and was canonized by Pope St. Paul VI in 1975. The life and work of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton are of special significance to Catholics of the United States. The opening prayer of the Mass summarizes the principal phases of her life and spirituality. Wife and mother, educator and foundress of the first religious congregation of women to have its origin in the United States. Eventually, the congregation multiplied into 7 distinct branches. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton dedicated her efforts especially to the care of the poor and to the education of Catholic youth. In the Office of Readings, there is an inspiring excerpt from one of St. Elizabeth's conferences to her Sisters of Charity. What was the rule of our dear Savior's life? You know it was to do his Father's will. Well then, the first end I propose in our daily work is to do the will of God. Secondly, to do it in the manner that he wills. And thirdly, to do it because it is his will. I know what is his will by those who direct me, whatever they bid me to do. If it is ever so small in itself, is the will of God for me. Then do it in the manner he wills it. For Wineskins, I'm Diana Hancharenko.
Hello and welcome to Spotlight. I'm Father Jim Korda. Today we're going to welcome Dr. James Kravec, who is a Chief Clinical Officer for Mercy Health. Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you so much, Father.
You know, it's interesting as I was preparing for this show, it dawned on me that disease and illness has really been part of humanity from our very beginning. And yet, throughout the history of human life, we've had certain what we call plagues or epidemics or now pandemics.
What has entered our humanity that's caused some of these illnesses and diseases?
Well, I think you're right. We've seen this for forever. And I think probably the biggest area that I've seen in public health or in community health has been the way we interact with people. And I think as something new arises, well, how is it spread? And this was evident really with the coronavirus, with COVID-19 back in December. We heard about it in China, but how quickly that transmitted because of travel and because of how we interact with people. If you think back, if this was in 1900 or 1800, it was still spread. Yeah. But I think the speed of spread was a lot less because of how our society has changed, for the most part in good ways. Yeah. But this is a negative of that.
It's interesting, as you had mentioned, like the early 1900s calls back to the Spanish flu over 100 years ago, which was, they say, one of the last major pandemics that we've experienced. What was different about that as compared to today?
I think the communication and the transportation. I think I see those. And we read about the stories how it was in Washington and Philadelphia and soon went over to St. Louis. I've seen those graphs and I've seen the flattening of the curve graphs, et cetera. But I think the spread was a lot longer because people they didn't fly from one place to another. I think that's probably what's changed the most. I think the other thing that's changed the most is the communication. Right. Realizing that anytime you turn on a TV channel or read a newspaper or on the internet, there's stories. Sure. That's changed. And the third thing is really almost the politicization of a medical illness on both sides, which has become challenging, I think.
We really don't want to get into politics on this show, but there are certain things that we have to do to look beyond that.
Right.
In a clinical medical way, what are some of the things that we should do, not even worrying about a pandemic, that we should do to take care of ourselves in a healthy way?
Well, that's great. And I agree. I try as I talk to folks, my patients or other media, is really just facts. And I think that's important because I've seen, and not just in politics, but both extremes on both sides that I don't think is right. So I think what do we do to take care of ourselves, I think, is always things that we should have been doing probably all along. Washing our hands, staying home when we're sick, trying to not necessarily be close to people all the time. I mean, we're a social society, but it's okay to have some physical distancing sometimes. Staying healthy as far as diet and exercise, those type of things that we're doing for, not all of those for coronavirus, but a lot of those we're doing make a lot of sense. Of course, the things like wearing masks, that's something we wouldn't have done before. We can't do forever. Sure. But I think those are things that we do know that help, at least in the short term now.
It's interesting when you talk about wearing a mask. I remember over the many years of traveling overseas, whether it's to Asia or Africa or wherever, many people wore masks then when they traveled. Did they know something that we didn't?
Well, I think it's cultural. I've seen in the Asia continent, we've seen on TV for 20, 30 years when people wearing masks, and you're right, on planes and whatnot. And I think it may be just a cultural norm or more accepted there. And I wonder, I've said this a lot, just after September 11, 2001, things changed forever. We're not able to walk in airplanes like we do. It's normal to have security checks and going into buildings. That's just expected now. I wonder if every winter, for example, people don't pull out masks. Some people, I just wonder that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just wonder if that won't change.
It probably will, because as you had mentioned, many things do change. How did they get the term the coronavirus or COVID-19? Is there a technical term of how the medical community arrived at that?
Well, so coronavirus is a RNA virus, and there are many types of coronaviruses. There's many different types. And we've all had a type of coronavirus, either last year, 2 years ago when we were a kid. It's the common cold virus. Runny nose, earache, sore throat. Not all of those are coronaviruses, and not all coronaviruses we've all had, but it's a type of virus that's out there. This is a deviation of that. It's a novel, which means new, coronavirus in 2019. So they shortened that to CO is coronavirus, is corona, the V is virus, and then the infectious, the ID, right? So that's COVID in 2019. It's novel because it's a new type. It's not one of the run-of-the-mill coronavirus.
Let's talk, if we can, about some of those myths that really surround the coronavirus now. You had mentioned just the social distancing and the face masks and the hand washing. Those are things that we need to do. Are there myths that are going on where people say, well, we can't do this because I'll catch that. I'm thinking of like maybe when someone had cancer or the AIDS virus. We thought things were highly contagious in certain ways or in all ways. So are there myths that we need to be aware of to make ourselves healthy when we think of this coronavirus?
I do think, I hear all the time the masks, not all the time, but I hear less now. Masks are a waste, it's not real. Masks do stop the spread of coronavirus from one person to another. We're sitting 6 feet apart here today, and normally we might be 3 feet apart for doing something like this. Right. Social distancing does help. Some people call those myths, the social distancing, the masks, not shaking hands and hugging someone. Those are really the main ones that I see. I think, and those could be stigmas too. Why are you wearing a mask and I'm not? See, that's important, I think, to have those conversations. There is science behind those. Now, if someone were to sneeze, does it go more than 6 feet? Yes, it does. But the 6 feet was created because that's the normal transmission that we know.
And I would think over time, like anything, we do learn more things about a particular illness or disease that would help us better not contract it. That probably is something in time we learn those things.
That's been the most frustrating part for me. What I'm telling you now, a week from now, may be completely different. Sure. Some people are very frustrated. CDC has changed their position on testing, masking, for example. 180 degrees. I've then gone out, I try to say what the CDC says or the Ohio Department of Health says. I try to say the same thing. And I'll say that, and then next week it turns. And that's frustrating. So I think we'll get more education and things will change.
For more information and to listen to Wineskins, visit the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown at www.doi.org. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Father Jim Korda. On behalf of all of us at CTNY, we wish you a Merry Christmas. Christmas is a blessed time to remember the miraculous gift of God's love in Jesus, the newborn King. We recall the angel's message announced over 2,000 years ago. Today, in the city of David, is born to you a Savior who is Christ the Lord. As we celebrate his birth, may his gifts of love and peace be born again in our hearts and homes this Christmas season.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
They say America is a land of opportunity.
But for some of us, it's not so easy.
Today, 1 out of every 6 children in America lives in poverty.
Where every day is hard.
And there's never enough.
But we don't want a handout, we want a way out.
This is America.
Together, we can do so much.
Will you help?
Nearly 13 million children live in poverty. Make a difference. Go to povertyusa.org and get involved. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.
The song we have for you today is from the CD called A Hand to Hold. It is by David Kauffman and can be found at goodforthesoulmusic.com.
Sometimes when I think of how I spend my precious time, I shudder at what I have made important. I fear that I have traded nows for afters and befores, and that I have missed the moments when joy comes to my door. I marvel so much at the prizes this world has to offer that I've let them borrow, almost steal my purpose. The emptiness I find inside chills me to the core and makes me long for moments when joy comes to my door. Heaven hold me, heaven mold me, be the gift I seek. Absence leave me, make new room with every breath I breathe. Lift me past pursuit of things that won't last evermore. Give me patient presence when joy comes to my door. See the children laughing as they play without a care. These are the ones from whom I learned my lesson. Tomorrow doesn't matter and yesterday's no more. So they never miss a moment when joy comes to their door. See them dancing, smiling, prancing round the world they roam. Nothing owns them, sorrow cannot in them make a home. They live outside, pursuit of things that won't last evermore. Joy resides and freely flies right through their open door. Pursuit of things that won't last evermore. Give me patient presence when joy comes to my door. Take a walk through your fine life and name what you are searching. And if it isn't joy, leave it behind. Seek the peace that knows your soul, purposeful and pure, and never miss a moment when joy comes to your door. Never miss a moment joy comes to your door.
And to tell us about the scriptures for this feast of the Epiphany of the Lord is Deacon Michael Kocjancic. He is from St. Charles Church in Boardman.
Today we celebrate the Feast of the Epiphany, from the Greek word meaning to show forth. Many think we celebrate the fact that the Magi, these Gentile strangers, were bringing gifts to the newborn king, but we're celebrating in a sense something more profound, the newborn king's introduction to the world. Their arrival with gifts is merely a recognizing and rejoicing at the significance of this birth. And what a birth announcement Jesus had. A star announced his coming to earth. Those who were wise enough to look up to the heavens saw it, and they were hoping that here would be the answer to the deeper questions of life. Who am I? Why am I? And what am I to do? As the star moved, their hearts were moved and leapt with joy in the hope of finding the answers to these questions. Surprisingly, the star passed over Jerusalem, not in the capital city to a family of royal lineage, but to a tiny, seemingly insignificant shepherd village, to a poor couple in a barn. Tradition tells us that these three were from different areas, Persia, India, and Arabia, and they were different ages, 60, 40, 20. The newborn babe was a king for all the peoples of all ages. Those who were too busy looking at themselves, what we could call Herod's Magi, would miss the announcement of the star. They also were looking for answers to the deeper questions. Who am I? Why am I? And what am I to do? Instead of trusting their hearts, they were trusting their heads, doing lip service to the powers in control. The head told them that this was not the way it was supposed to be. It was impossible to believe. And so they were afraid of what might be demanded of them, to come and honor the newborn king. They were afraid of upsetting the status quo. Notice that until the star reached Bethlehem, until it rested over Jesus, it moved. The Magi saw it moved. They left the comforts they knew to find a gift of life that they had always sought. We have to do the same. We cannot wait for Jesus to come to us, but it is imperative that we go to find him. Also notice that the Magi did not travel alone, but in a caravan. They needed guidance, balance, encouragement, and support. We also do not make the journey alone. We are in a caravan, a family of believers for guidance, balance, encouragement, and support. When the star came to rest over Jesus, the Magi found their life was to change. They went home a different way, not the way that brought them here, a way that would return them to the evil that was Herod, but instead followed a path home to a life of guidance, balance, and encouragement. It is the same with us. Once we find Jesus, we bring the gift of ourself. We worship him, and our life will change. We will travel to our heavenly home in a new way, instead of the way that society and culture wants to impose on us. So what are the questions for today? Are we willing to look up to the heavens and see the wonder that is God? Are we willing to follow the star to the newborn King? Will we listen to our hearts or to our heads? Come then, let us adore him, Christ the King, on this Epiphany. For Wineskins, I'm Deacon Michael Kocjancic.
Across the centuries, north, east, south, and west, and all points in between, Jesus Christ has been quietly changing lives. What seemed so incredible at the beginning of his life has become more and more a tremendous fact of history. Wineskins is made possible through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. The program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm Father Jim Korda, saying thank you for being with us. Have a blessed week. And we of CTNY would like to express blessings to our friends in the Orthodox Church who are celebrating Christmas today.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. She's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.